Does this shock you? The Kremlin has announced new demands from Putin ahead of the meeting in Alaska. The dictator got scared? If Zelensky is in Alaska, Putin won't come. Everyone was thrown into battle, and Russia launched a large-scale offensive along the entire front line. China has provided Russia with laser air defense systems to shoot down Ukrainian drones. Vasily Maluk revealed sensational details about Operation Web, and what is Putin afraid of? 12 air defense systems guard the dictator's dacha in Valdai. Hello, my name is Anastasia Dmitrovskaya. Right now, let's talk about the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. The meeting between Trump and Putin is just 2 days away, and the location of the talks is already known: a U.S. military base in Alaska's largest city, Anchorage. These will be bilateral negotiations, and Trump's main goal, according to the White House, is to better understand Russia's position on achieving peace. Although, of course, the Kremlin will be selling its desire for peace to Trump, and it's already known on what terms. The Italian publication Corriere della Sera interviewed Dmitry Suslov, an external advisor to the Kremlin, and he revealed that Russia wants to take Donbass without a fight. And in addition,
specifically, Putin's demands include the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. For their part, the Russians would withdraw their troops from the Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv regions. In the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, the front line remains unchanged. In addition, Russia insists on Kyiv committing not to join NATO, on the demilitarization of Ukraine, and on carrying out a constitutional reform that would establish a federal structure for the country.
In short, nothing new. Although the aforementioned Suslov says that Putin has softened the conditions for peace in Ukraine, are we supposed to be grateful for that or something? And here's another interesting detail that answers the question: why did Russia not just agree to negotiations with Trump, but actually propose them itself? Ukraine's main intelligence directorate has obtained Russia's strategic planning documents, and from them it's clear that the Kremlin wants to resolve the Ukrainian issue by 2026. In their strategic planning documents, they clearly stated the Ukrainian issue must be resolved by 2026. This is a direct quote from the planning documents of the Russian Federation. We understand why this is the case, because the costs of the war for the Russian Federation are extremely high. We can see the negative trends that currently exist in the Russian Federation's economy. Essentially, it has entered a stage of stagnation. 42% of the budget is, in fact, allocated to the defense industry for the war, and this affects other sectors of the economy. That's the first point. Second, why then did they forecast possible military scenarios? They have actually forecasted a scenario for global development, where there is a certain place for the United States, China, and where one of the scenarios considered is a multipolar world, including one particular scenario. This is the regional scenario. And they come to the conclusion that if they continue the war, and believe me, the war cost them more than $1 billion, which is extremely significant for them. If they continue this war at the same pace and with the same expenses, they will never be able to be equal to or compete with either the United States of America or China. And then they become just an ordinary regional state limited to the post-Soviet space. What do you think will be the outcome of the negotiations between Trump and Putin? And continuing on the topic of Putin's negotiations with Trump, as we've already mentioned, these will be bilateral negotiations. So, Bloomberg reports that Putin's top priority was to prevent the president of Ukraine from attending the meeting in Alaska.
The presence of the Ukrainian leader would have required real negotiations, which would have made it harder to conceal Russia's lack of interest. By insisting on a bilateral meeting with Trump, Putin may try to propose terms that the current US administration might accept, but he knows that Ukraine will not. This would once again make Zelensky the one whom Trump blames for obstructing peace, thereby taking the pressure off Putin.
In other words, this is yet another piece of evidence that this is Putin's show, and he isn't even ready to seriously talk about peace, let alone actually work towards achieving it. And according to Bloomberg as well, Putin's goal is more about legitimizing himself to show that he is not an outcast.
The second goal was to find a venue for a meeting that would demonstrate both to Russians and to world leaders that Putin is no longer an outcast, avoiding travel out of fear of being arrested on the war crimes warrant issued against him by the International Criminal Court in 2023.
And as for Zelensky's participation, there is news on that front as well. Today, the president of Ukraine, together with his European colleagues, will hold an online meeting with Donald Trump.
We will share the details in upcoming episodes. While the world discusses the talks between Trump and Putin and his supposed desire for peace, the Ukrainian front tells a different story. Russia has no plans to stop.
I can see that preparations for an offensive are underway. Russian army units are being transferred through the Rostov region from Russia to Donbass from Crimea and also to Pokrovsk from the direction of Konstantinovka. In other words, we are seeing preparations everywhere for a major clash, with reserves being brought in. For the coming months, I see very active preparations to fight us with full force.
According to President Zelensky, Russia will launch its offensive operation in September. By that time, the Russian Federation will have prepared its main forces for a larger offensive. The targets, the Zaporizhzhia, Pokrovsk and Novopavlivka directions.
Since they were unable to take the Sumy direction, Russian troops have begun moving toward the Zaporizhzhia and Pokrovsk directions. They are preparing for an offensive operation, we believe, in 3 directions. The main directions are Zaporizhzhia, Pokrovsk, and Novopavlivka. We estimate that about 15,000 additional troops will be sent to Zaporizhzhia, about 7,000 to Pokrovsk, and perhaps 5,000 more to Novopavlivka. We consider this direction to be the 3rd in terms of priority. Out of the 53,000 in Sumy, we believe that about 30,000 will now be sent to these 3 directions. Russian forces will do everything possible to begin preparations for offensive actions after August 15th. The main forces may be ready by September, and with additional reinforcements by November.
The German publication Bild, in turn, writes that Russia has already begun its offensive and did so immediately after Witkoff's visit to Russia. It was during these offensive actions that Russia broke through in the direction of Dobropilya. This refers to the Dobropilya-Kramatorsk highway, which the Russians managed to cut off. And yes, this could indeed indicate an acceleration of advances in preparation for negotiations. At the same time, the VOSU in Dnipro says that this is not a Russian breakthrough, but rather the infiltration of small infantry groups.
It's important to understand that these are small groups of just a few people. Their presence is recorded, and that's why on maps from open sources it may seem like, oh my god, the Russians have advanced. I don't know, the last figure mentioned was, I think, 12 kilometers deep into Ukrainian territory. But it's important to understand that this doesn't mean they've taken control of the territory. What it means is that a small group of Russians, about 5 to 10 people, has infiltrated, and this is completely different from how it looks on the map. It's not that they've taken control of the entire route they've traveled. No, they just passed through and tried to hide somewhere in a basement.
The General Staff confirms the infiltration of small enemy groups. We're talking about enemy groups in the settlements of Vesely, Svobodny, Rubizhne and Kucherev Yar.
To penetrate deep into our defenses, the Russian invaders are acting boldly. Despite their losses, they are trying to infiltrate through our defensive lines with sabotage and small infantry groups. In particular, several small enemy groups, bypassing the positions of Ukrainian defenders, attempted to advance toward the settlement of Zoloty Kolodets. In addition, taking advantage of the local terrain, saboteurs secretly infiltrated the settlements of Vesely, Svobodny, Rubizhne and Kucherev Yar. Some of these groups have already been destroyed, and the rest are in the process of being eliminated.
Alongside this, the General Staff reports that there are currently more than 110,000 occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction. And according to the Deputy Commander of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, Maxim Zhorin, in Pokrovsk, we are facing a complete...
Right now, it is extremely important to stop the enemy's advance. They are not complete idiots and can see that there is success, so they will transfer forces there to build on that success. And the possible consequences are not only the encirclement of Pokrovsk, but also taking control of the rest of Donetsk region. In other words, a complete...
Alongside the worsening situation in Donetsk region, the Ukrainian armed forces have achieved successes in Zaporizhzhia region. Ukraine's defense forces have cleared Stepnohursk of enemy groups. Let's express our sincere gratitude to the brave Ukrainian armed forces and actively support our dedicated soldiers with generous donations. This is truly the very least we can do for them right now, considering their immense sacrifices. In the Vovchansk direction, border guards captured a 19-year-old occupier who chose to go to war instead of going to prison.
19 years old, Kochubeyevsky district, rifleman observer, 136th Motorized Rifle Brigade.
The young man says that despite his age, he had already served time in a penal colony. He had 11 months left, but they started charging him with new crimes which, according to him, he did not commit. And so, to avoid a new sentence, he signed a contract with the Russian army.
I went to serve because when I was in prison, I had 11 months left to serve. And they were trying to add another 4 to 6 years. They just added other charges. Other cases.
But as they say, that's not all. The guy spent a month and a half at the front, but never received the promised salary.
What amount of money was he promised to be paid monthly? From 190 to 210,000. Did he actually receive this money? Oh, no, he hasn't received it yet, but he did get the signing bonus. How much was the signing bonus? 1,600,000?
And so the climax of this dramatic story was that a group of 4 Russians was hit by a drone strike, 3 were killed, and the 19-year-old guy survived and was taken prisoner.
How did you end up captured? I was returning to my own. How long have you been in the combat zone? About a month and a half. What did the commanders say about the situation at the front? They said, well, they're shooting there. Basically, they're shooting. Mortars are firing. In politics, Baba Yaga is at work.
The Russians are probably planning to use white phosphorus in Shaheds. The president of the All-Ukrainian Aviation Organization, Hennady Kazan, says that in the near future, the enemy may begin attacking border areas with Shaheds carrying white phosphorus.
And as for starting to use, for example, white phosphorus, information about this has already appeared online. Right now, the Russians are doing everything to make us understand just how great the risks could be from using cluster munitions or other means with white phosphorus, which they plan to equip on the external mounts of their own Shaheds, in order to try to strike various targets on Ukrainian territory. In particular, it is possible that these targets could be located close to the front line.
In fact, white phosphorus is particularly dangerous because when it comes into contact with human skin, it causes severe chemical burns and can also harm the respiratory system. What can you say about that? Russia is a terrorist state, so news like this no longer surprises anyone. The security service of Ukraine in Zaporizhzhia has uncovered a Russian agent network that, attention, was coordinated by the abbot of a church of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate.
The priest was looking for pro-Russian-minded citizens, recruiting potential candidates, among whom was also a 41-year-old conscript from a local military unit. The agent was passing on information about the location, numbers and armament of Ukrainian troops in the Zaporizhzhia direction, and also attached photocopies of documents regarding the deployment of new formations on the front line.
The Security Service of Ukraine reported that the individuals involved have been detained, and the cleric was also found to have a Russian passport. At present, they are in custody. Britain advised Europe not to make pointless comments regarding the meeting between Trump and Putin.
Figures on Downing Street have long maintained that the best way to influence Trump is to use access and influence behind closed doors, rather than publicly pushing him to take one position or another.
British politicians fear that public demands from Europeans toward Trump could have the opposite effect, and he might exclude Europe from negotiations on Ukraine.
Officials are increasingly concerned about public comments regarding Ukraine's future from figures such as Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz, and Kaja Kallas, the EU's chief diplomat.
And what do you think? Are the concerns of British officials justified? Russia is shooting down Ukrainian drones with Chinese laser air defense systems. We're talking about the Chinese mobile laser air defense system Silk Hunter, which China has provided to Russia to combat drones.
As analysts note, based on data available online, the system has an estimated power of about 10 to 20 kilowatts. The range for destroying low-flying, small-sized targets is up to 1.5 kilometers. The laser's operating time required to hit a target is approximately 10 seconds or more. At the same time, the blinding of the target occurs at a distance of up to 3 kilometers.
We never doubted that Putin is a coward and a paranoid. Especially after it turned out that before meeting with the bunker dweller, people had to go through quarantine. And let's not forget about the air defense systems placed right on the rooftops of buildings near the Kremlin. But the paranoia has reached an entirely new level. Radio Liberty has discovered that near his residence in Valdai, Putin has installed 12 Panzer S-1 systems.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
It is noted that Putin's alleged companion, Alina Kabeva, and their children often spend time in Valdai. In 2023, the project reported that a new house was built there for her and the children, and her assistants have apartments not far from the residence.
Do you know how many air defense systems there are in all of Moscow and the Moscow region? 60. 60 air defense positions to protect about 20 million people and 12 for just one Putin. As they say, the difference is hard to miss. The special operation Web was postponed because Russian drivers got drunk. The head of the SBU, Maluk, revealed previously unknown details about the legendary Web operation. After hearing these facts, you understand why the operation took a year and a half to prepare. And honestly, I thought that Web couldn't impress me anymore. But I was wrong. Imagine, we brought sanctioned goods into Russia.
We also delivered the appropriate cabins there. Each of these cabins is a fully autonomous, so-called hunting lodge. And inside it, there was an EcoFlow battery, solar panels, and other groups of goods. This made it possible to continuously recharge the drones, which were already supposed to be in their combat positions in case our operation took place during the colder time of year, and in those time zones the temperature can drop well below -40, so the drone had to be fully charged. But at the same time, this created additional difficulties in bringing these shelters into the territory of the Russian Federation. Because none of these groups of goods can simply be brought in, since Russia is under sanctions, and that made it extremely difficult as well. I won't go into all the details, but believe me, we went through 7 circles of hell to make it happen.
And now actually about Russians' love for vodka, which cost us a month of time.
We had planned to do this before May 9th, but over Easter they went on a drinking binge. Sorry, but they really overindulged in alcohol. Would that have stopped anything? There you go. And we couldn't. Our contacts couldn't get through. One driver was missing, then another. You see? Then comes May 1st, their holiday, and for a week they're just out of commission, nowhere to be found. Then May 9th. So we really lost a month, I'm telling you honestly, and that's the main reason why.
They showed it to the SBU and what a large team worked to destroy a third of Russia's strategic aviation, Maluk said, and promised to reveal details about a super important operation, strikes on the Crimean Bridge. Although Putin's toy is still standing, it no longer helps the Russian military. After all, the enemy is no longer moving equipment across the overpass.
Serious damage has been inflicted on the corresponding supports, the so-called piers. And essentially today, the bridge only operates in a mode that allows no more than 5-ton trucks to cross. The enemy is not moving any military logistics there, because I would say it's an emergency structure now.
And because the Crimean Bridge has become an emergency structure, Maluk is now one of Putin's top targets.
From a security standpoint, I can't reveal all the details. I have many alternate command posts. Of course, I change my place of residence. They try, but they can't reach me through sabotage. That's why now they're planning a missile and Shahed drone attack. Well, honestly, I don't worry about it at all. It only motivates me. But to be specific, they try to figure out the locations of the command posts in the regions where I periodically go, so they can strike where we're not protected by Patriot systems using ballistic missiles. There have been such cases. 2 Iskander missiles hit exactly the alternate command post right where I was passing through. But clearly, well, I'm sitting right here in front of you. Alive, healthy, smiling, everything's fine.
Share your thoughts about the SBU special operation in the comments. It'll be interesting to read them. Give this video a like to support what we're doing, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you soon.